The night Kale Ashbourne entered this world, the sky itself screamed. Lightning carved through clouds the color of dried blood, and every fortune-teller within 100 miles woke from violent nightmares. In the grand chambers of the Ashbourne clan, the most powerful mage lineage in the Eastern Territories, a woman's screams mixed with thunder as she gave birth to what should have been the next prodigy of their bloodline. But when the midwife lifted that infant into candlelight, she dropped him immediately. Her hands trembled so violently she could barely speak, because there, wrapped around the newborn's throat like a collar of pure shadow, was a mark that hadn't been seen in over 1,000 years. The sigil of the Reaper, the death contract. The clan elders burst into that room within minutes. They stood there, these powerful men and women who could level mountains with a flick of their wrists, and they were terrified of a baby. Lord Aldrich Ashbourne, the clan patriarch and the child's own grandfather, drew his sword. He actually raised a blade against his newborn grandchild, but before he could swing, the shadows in that room began to move. They crawled across the walls, like living things, and for just a moment everyone present heard something, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, speaking directly into their minds. "This one belongs to me." Lord Aldrich lowered his sword. Not because he wanted to, not because he chose mercy, but because something ancient and terrible made it very clear that killing this child was not an option. So instead, they did something far worse. They let him live, but they made absolutely certain that every single day of that life would be a punishment. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like the setup to a typical revenge story. Mistreated child grows up, gets strong, crushes his enemies. And sure, that's part of it. But what makes Kale's story different is the thing that marked him at birth. Because that wasn't just some random curse. At some point during his mother's pregnancy, perhaps even at the moment of conception itself, a deal was struck. A contract was formed between an unborn soul and death itself, and the terms of that contract would reshape the entire world. His mother died that night. They said it was complications from the birth, but Kale would later learn the truth. The moment he entered the world, something left it. An equivalent exchange. A life for a life. The first payment on a debt that would take decades to fully understand. His father, Ronan Ashbourne, second son of the patriarch, looked at his newborn child exactly once. He saw that mark. He saw his wife's cooling body. And something inside him broke in a way that could never be repaired. From that night forward, Kale didn't have a father. He had an enemy who shared his blood. The Ashbourne estate was magnificent. Sprawling gardens of enchanted flowers that bloomed in impossible colors, training grounds where young mages practiced spells that could tear holes in reality, libraries containing knowledge accumulated over 40 generations of magical excellence, Nelligard and Devrades, and tucked away in the servants' quarters behind the kitchens in a room so small you could touch both walls while lying down, was where Kale Ashbourne spent the first 15 years of his life. They didn't feed him at the family table. They didn't allow him to train with the other children. They didn't even give him proper clothes until he was old enough to work for them. The heir to one of the most powerful magical bloodlines in existence was treated worse than the dogs that guarded the front gates. And the worst part was that nobody in that entire compound thought this was wrong, because to them, Kale wasn't a child. He was a curse wearing human skin. A reminder of the night their clan's perfect record was stained by something they couldn't control or understand. His earliest memories were of whispers, walking through the corridors to fetch water for the kitchens, and hearing servants fall silent as he passed, feeling the weight of fearful stares from people who should have bowed to him. Even children younger than him knew to avoid the boy with the mark. The mothers of the clan had told their sons and daughters that if they played with Kale, the death god would notice them, that his very presence could attract misfortune. So Kale learned to be invisible. He learned to move through shadows, to keep his head down, to make himself so small and quiet that people might forget he existed. For a while, he thought maybe that was his purpose. Maybe the contract on his soul meant he was supposed to fade away, to dissolve into nothingness like smoke in wind. But the thing about contracts is that they have two sides. And whatever Death wanted from Kale, it wasn't his disappearance. He discovered this when he was 7 years old. His cousin Marcus, third in line for clan leadership and blessed with more magical talent than common sense, had decided that target practice would be more interesting with a living target. They cornered Kale behind the stables, Marcus and his friends, 5 boys from noble families who had been taught since birth that they were better than everyone else. Marcus raised his hand, fire dancing across his fingertips, and he smiled the way a cat smiles at a mouse. The first spell hit Kale in the chest. It burned through his thin shirt and left a mark that would scar. He didn't scream. Screaming was pointless. Nobody would come to help him. The second spell hit his shoulder, spinning him around. The third caught his leg and dropped him to the dirt. Marcus walked closer, flame growing brighter in his palm, saying something about how creatures like Kale shouldn't exist, how he was doing the clan a favor, and then Kale felt it. For the first time in his life, he felt the mark on his throat grow warm. The shadows behind the stable stretched. They reached outward like fingers, like claws, like things that had been waiting 7 years for this exact moment. Marcus's fire went out, not flickered, not dimmed. The flames simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been there at all. And in the sudden darkness, something looked back at those boys through Kale's eyes. They ran. All 5 of them, including Marcus, ran screaming from that place like the death god himself was chasing them. Which, in a sense, it was. Kale sat there in the dirt, burned and bleeding, and for the first time since his birth, he smiled. Because now he understood something important. He wasn't cursed, he was chosen. And whatever power lived inside that contract, it would protect what belonged to it. Of course, this incident only made things worse. Word spread through the clan like wildfire. The cursed child had awakened something. The death mark had responded. Suddenly, Kale wasn't just an embarrassment to be hidden away, he was a threat to be neutralized. Lord Aldrich called a secret meeting of the clan elders. They debated for hours behind sealed doors, discussing what to do about the problem of Kale Ashbourne. Some wanted to execute him despite the warning they'd received at his birth. Others suggested sealing his powers, binding them so deeply he could never access them again. A few even proposed selling him to the Tower of Shadows, a secretive organization that collected magical anomalies for purposes no one wanted to discuss. In the end, they chose a different path. They would break him, not his body, his spirit. They would make his life so unbearable, so filled with constant suffering, that whatever power lived inside him would have nothing left to protect. They would crush the host and hope the parasite died with it. What followed were the worst 8 years of Kale's existence. They assigned him to the most dangerous tasks, cleaning the beast cages where magical creatures that could kill a grown man were kept, testing potions that hadn't been properly stabilized, entering cursed areas of the estate where servants had disappeared decades ago. Every assignment was designed with one purpose: give him a chance to die without anyone having to be blamed for it. But he didn't die. Every time death reached for him, something pushed back. The venomous serpent that should have struck his throat missed by inches. The collapsing tunnel that should have buried him held just long enough for him to escape. The cursed artifact that should have consumed his soul simply refused to activate in his presence. It was as if the universe itself had received a memo. This one is not yours to take. And during those long, brutal years, Kale learned things. He watched the clan's mages train, memorizing their techniques from shadowed corners. He read forbidden books in the library after midnight, teaching himself theories that children his age weren't supposed to understand. He studied the Ashbourne legacy, the source of their power, and he discovered something that would change everything. The Ashbourne clan drew their magic from contracts, not death contracts like the one marked on his throat, but elemental contracts forged generations ago with spirits of fire and lightning and storm. Their power was borrowed, leased, dependent on entities that could revoke access at any moment. They weren't strong because of who they were strong because of deals their ancestors had made. And Kale's contract was older, stronger, written in a language that predated the very concept of elements. His deal was with something that had existed before fire learned to burn, before lightning first crackled through primordial skies. Death was the first truth and the final one, and somehow, impossibly, death had chosen to share its power with a human child. The problem was access. The mark on his throat was a locked door, and Kale didn't have the key. Whatever power waited on the other side, it emerged only in moments of extreme crisis, protecting him through instinct rather than intention. He couldn't control it, couldn't summon it at will. The contract was there, but he couldn't read the terms. So he waited. He survived. He endured every humiliation and every injury, knowing that someday, somehow, he would find a way to unlock what he'd been given. That day came on his 15th birthday. Not that anyone celebrated, not that anyone even acknowledged the date. But KL knew. He had been counting the days since he was old enough to understand what time meant, waiting for this specific moment. Because in his secret studies, he had discovered something important. The original death contract wasn't meant to activate at birth. It was designed to mature, to develop alongside its host, reaching full power exactly 15 years after formation. He snuck out that night, past the guards who never watched the servants' quarters anyway, through the gardens and into the forest that bordered the Ashbourne estate. There was a place there, a clearing where the moonlight fell in strange patterns, where the veil between worlds grew thin enough to almost see through. Kale had found it years ago and had been waiting ever since to use it. He knelt in the center of that clearing. He pressed his hand against the mark on his throat, and for the first time in his life, he spoke directly to the entity that owned part of his soul. I want to know the terms. I want to understand the contract. Show me what I am. The world went dark. Not night dark. Void dark. The kind of darkness that exists before light was invented. The kind of darkness that waits patiently at the end of all things. And in that darkness, something stirred. When Kale could see again, he wasn't in the forest anymore. He stood in a vast hall made of something that looked like frozen smoke, neither solid nor gas, shifting constantly while somehow remaining perfectly still. And at the far end of that hall, sitting on a throne carved from what might have been petrified shadows, was the being that had marked him at birth. It didn't look like a skeleton in a robe. It didn't look like a gaunt figure with a scythe. It looked like a void in the shape of a person, an absence of everything where something should have been. Looking at it hurt in ways that had nothing to do with physical pain. It was like staring at a concept that human minds weren't designed to process. You came, it said, and its voice was the sound of final breaths, of stopped heartbeats, of last words spoken to empty rooms. You came willingly. Kale stood his ground. He had spent 15 years being afraid. He had spent 15 years being small and invisible and apologetic for his own existence. He wasn't going to spend one more second that way. You marked me before I was born. You took my mother as payment. I've suffered for 15 years because of a deal I never agreed to. The least you can do is tell me why. The entity on the throne leaned forward. Something that might have been a smile crossed its non-face. Your mother came to me willingly. She was dying, you see. A curse placed by enemies of your clan, undetectable and incurable. You would have died with her, unborn and unmourned. She begged for a way to save you. I gave her one. The deal was simple. Your mother's remaining life force in exchange for my mark, my protection, my power. She didn't hesitate. parents rarely do when their children are involved. Kale felt something crack inside his chest. All those years he had wondered, had his mother even wanted him? Had she known what he would become? Had she died cursing the things she had brought into the world? She loved you, the entity continued. She loved you enough to bargain with death itself. She loved you enough to choose your life over her own. That love, that sacrifice, it became part of the contract. It became the foundation of everything you are. What am I? Kale whispered. What did her sacrifice make me? The entity rose from its throne. It was taller than the hall, taller than the sky, taller than concepts like height were supposed to allow. And yet it crossed that impossible distance in a single step, standing before Kale close enough to touch. You are my executor, my blade in the mortal realm. Death cannot walk freely among the living, but you can. Death cannot interfere directly in human affairs, but you can. The power you carry is not borrowed like your clan's cheap contracts. It is yours, given freely, earned through blood and sacrifice and 15 years of survival. The terms are simple: live, grow strong. And when the time comes, execute those who have cheated death, those who have stolen life, those who have twisted the natural order for their own gain. The power will grow with you. The more you use it, the more you become what you were meant to be. And what was that? Kale asked. What am I meant to be? The entity reached out and touched the mark on Kale's throat. It burned. It burned in ways that fire could never match, in ways that reached past flesh and bone into the very essence of his being. And when the burning stopped, Kale could feel it. The locked door had opened. The contract was finally accessible. You are meant to be terrifying. Kale woke up in the forest clearing. Dawn was breaking. Birds were singing. The world continued as if nothing had changed. But Kale was different now. He could feel the power inside him, not distant and instinctive anymore, but present and available. He raised his hand and watched shadows coil around his fingers like obedient pets. He smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. The walk back to the Ashbourne estate took about an hour. Kale didn't hurry. He was done hurrying. He was done being small and quiet and invisible. Every step he took left frost on the grass behind him, the ambient temperature dropping wherever he passed. He didn't do this intentionally. It was simply what happened now when his power wasn't fully contained. Death ran cold, and Kale was Death's executor. The guards at the gate saw him coming. They reached for their weapons on instinct, responding to the wrongness they felt emanating from the boy they had ignored for 15 years. Then they saw his eyes. His eyes had changed. They were the color of fresh graves, dark earth and darker promises. And when he looked at those guards, they felt their own mortality. Looking back, they let him pass. They let him pass and they didn't say a word, because speaking to him suddenly felt like it might attract attention they very much wanted to avoid. The servants' quarters were empty when he arrived. Everyone had already begun their morning duties. Kale walked to his tiny room and began gathering his few possessions. He was done living here. He was done being treated like a stain on the family honor. He was done with all of it. But before he could leave, his door opened. His father stood there. Ronan Ashbourne, who hadn't spoken to his son in 15 years, who had looked at him exactly once and decided he was a monster worth abandoning. He looked older than Kale remembered, harder, more broken. The years had not been kind to him. But then again, the years hadn't been kind to anyone in this cursed bloodline. They said you went into the forest last night, Ronan said. His voice was rough, like he had forgotten how to use it. They said you came back different. Kale didn't respond. He just looked at his father with those new eyes, those grave dark eyes, and watched the man flinch. Whatever you've done, whatever you've become, it needs to end here. The elders won't accept you gaining power. They'll destroy you before they let the death contract become a real threat to the clan. A real threat. Kale laughed, and the sound made the candle in his room go out. The candle was magic-fueled, designed to burn forever. And it went out because Kale's laughter had reminded it that nothing was meant to last forever. I've been a threat since the day I was born. The only difference is that now I can actually do something about it. You don't understand, Ronan insisted, stepping closer. His hands were shaking. Kale could see them shaking. The elders have been planning for this. They knew the contract would mature. They've spent 15 years preparing countermeasures, seals, binding spells, artifacts designed specifically to neutralize death magic. If you try to fight them, you'll lose. Then why are you here? Kale asked. Why are you warning me? Ronan's face twisted. For a moment, something almost like pain crossed his features. Because your mother loved you. Because she gave everything she had so you could live. And I couldn't protect her. I couldn't save her from the curse that was killing her. I couldn't even acknowledge my own son. Because I was too afraid of what the clan would do. For 15 years, I've been a coward. And I'm tired of it. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellow with age. This is the original contract, the one your mother signed. I've kept it hidden all these years. The elders don't know it still exists. They think it was destroyed when your mother died. But the terms are specific. The power can't be sealed as long as the contract remains intact. As long as this paper exists, they can't bind you. Kale took the paper. His hands were steady. His heart was steady. Everything about him was steady now, grounded in the certainty of what he was and what he could do. Why should I trust you? He asked. You abandoned me. You let them treat me like an animal. Ronan's shoulders slumped. You shouldn't trust me. I haven't earned that right. But I'm telling you the truth anyway. Take the contract. Leave this place. Go somewhere they can't find you and grow strong enough that when they come for you, and they will come for you, you'll be able to defend yourself. Kale considered this. He looked at his father, at this broken man who had failed him in every conceivable way, and he felt something strange. Not forgiveness, not affection, but perhaps the smallest hint of understanding. I'm not running, he said finally. I'm done running. If the elders want to destroy me, let them try. I've survived everything they've thrown at me for 15 years. I can survive whatever comes next. He walked past his father, contract in hand, and made his way toward the main hall. Behind him, Ronan called out something, a warning or a plea, but Kale wasn't listening anymore. He had business to attend to. The main hall of the Ashbourne estate was where the clan conducted official affairs. It was an enormous space, marble floors and enchanted murals, with a raised platform at the far end where Lord Aldrich usually held court. Kale had only been inside it a handful of times, always as a servant, always invisible. He wasn't invisible now. The doors slammed open before he touched them, shadow magic responding to his intention. The dozen or so clan members gathered in the hall turned to stare, their conversations dying mid-sentence as they saw who had entered. Lord Aldrich rose from his seat. The patriarch was old, but terrifyingly powerful, a man who had extended his life through magical means and ruled the clan with absolute authority for over a century. His eyes narrowed as he took in his grandson's changed appearance. So, it's finally happened. The contract has matured. Kale walked forward. With each step, the temperature in the hall dropped another degree. The flames in the enchanted braziers flickered and dimmed. The shadows in the corners stretched toward him like eager servants awaiting commands. You spent 15 years trying to break me, Kale said, his voice carrying easily despite not being raised. Trying to kill me without actually having to swing the blade. Every dangerous task, every near-fatal accident, every day of being treated as something less than human. All of it was designed to destroy me before this moment arrived. He stopped in the center of the hall, directly before the patriarch's platform. You failed. Lord Aldrich's hand glowed with power, Around the room, other clan members were reaching for their magic as well, preparing spells and summoning elemental energy. This changes nothing, boy. We have prepared for this. We have countermeasures in place. Whatever power that contract has given you, it won't be enough to stand against the combined might of the Ashbourne bloodline. He gestured, and something descended from the ceiling. A device intricate and glowing with runes, designed specifically to target death magic and its user. This is a soul cage, constructed over 12 years using techniques from the Forbidden Archives. Once activated, it will tear your contract apart and leave you an empty shell. You should have run when you had the chance. Kale looked at the device. He felt its intent, the magical programming designed to destroy what he had become. And he felt something else as well, the contract stirring inside him, recognizing a threat, preparing to respond. An interesting toy, he said, but there's something you don't understand about death magic. The shadows around him surged upward, wrapping around the soul cage before it could activate. Death doesn't negotiate. Death doesn't compromise. Death doesn't lose. The device exploded. Not destructively. 1 second, it simply ceased to function, its enchantments dying in an instant as Kale's power overwhelmed every protective barrier and fail-safe built into its design. The clan members attacked. Fire and lightning and shards of elemental ice, all converging on the boy standing in the center of their hall. But Kale didn't move. He didn't need to. The shadows around him moved instead, intercepting every attack, consuming every spell, feeding on the magical energy being thrown at him. Your contracts are borrowed power, Kale said as the assault continued and failed. You made deals with spirits that don't really care about you. Temporary arrangements that can be revoked at any moment. But my contract is different. My power was given freely. It's mine, forever. He raised his hand, and the shadows obeyed. The first clan member to fall was Marcus. Kale's cousin, the boy who had burned him all those years ago, found himself wrapped in darkness so complete that even his fire couldn't penetrate it. He screamed as the shadow squeezed, not killing him, not yet, but making him feel how close death was, how easily it could take him. The second to fall was one of the elders, a woman who had once suggested KL be sold to the Tower of Shadows. She tried to teleport away, but death magic didn't just affect the body, it affected the soul, and souls couldn't run from what was coming for them. The third, the fourth, the fifth. One by one the gathered clan members fell or fled, their vaunted power meaningless against something that predated their entire magical system. In minutes, only Lord Aldrich remained standing, his face pale but his resolve apparently unbroken. You think this changes anything, the patriarch snarled. You think defeating a few clan members makes you strong enough to challenge our entire lineage. There are hundreds of us. Thousands, including branch families. You can't kill everyone. Kale tilted his head. The gesture was almost innocent, almost childlike. I don't want to kill everyone. I just want you to understand something, grandfather. He walked up the steps to the platform, shadows trailing behind him like a royal cape. For 15 years you treated me as less than human. For 15 years you tried to break me. And all you accomplished was making sure I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. He stood before the patriarch now, close enough to touch. I'm leaving. I'm going somewhere your authority doesn't reach, and I'm going to grow stronger than you can possibly imagine. And when I come back, this clan will bend to me, or it will be scattered to the winds. That's not a threat. That's a prophecy. Death never lies. Lord Aldrich stared at his grandson, at the boy he had tried so hard to destroy. And for the first time in over a century, the patriarch of the Ashbourne clan felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. Kalu turned and walked out of the hall. Nobody tried to stop him. Nobody moved at all, until his footsteps had faded completely. And in his wake, an entire clan began to reconsider everything they thought they knew about power. The road away from the Ashbourne estate was long. Kale walked it slowly, savoring the feeling of freedom. For the first time in his life, the sky above was clear and blue, the kind of sky that seemed to promise endless possibility. And ahead of him, gleaming on a distant hill, was the structure that would define his future. The Arcane Academy, the greatest institution of magical learning in the entire continent. A place where nobles and commoners alike could prove their worth through skill rather than bloodline. A place where even a cursed boy with a death contract could become something more. Kale had learned about the academy during his secret studies. It was neutral ground, outside the influence of any single clan. Families like the Ashbournes weren't supposed to interfere with its operations. Students were judged on merit alone, and those who graduated became the most powerful mages and warriors in the realm. It was the perfect place to grow stronger, the perfect place to learn control of his new abilities, the perfect place to make allies who might stand with him when the time came to face his family again. The entrance examination was in 3 days. Kale had 3 days to travel to the academy's location, to present himself for evaluation, to prove that he belonged among the elite of the next generation. 3 days wasn't much time, but he had spent 15 years waiting for this moment. 3 days was nothing. He reached the academy on the morning of the examination. The place was even more impressive in person than he had imagined from descriptions. Towers that scraped the clouds, their surfaces inscribed with runes that hummed with accumulated magical knowledge. Training grounds where elemental forces clashed and danced, under the supervision of master instructors. Libraries that reportedly contained more books than the entire Ashbourne estate had words. And people, so many people, young men and women from every corner of the continent, all gathered to prove themselves worthy of acceptance. Some had obvious noble bearing, expensive clothes, and haughty expressions. Others were clearly from common backgrounds, determined to rise above their station through skill and dedication. All of them were powerful. All of them were confident. Kale looked at them and felt nothing but anticipation. The registration process was straightforward. Name, background, magical affinity. He gave his name as simply Kale, leaving off the Ashbourne surname he had never truly been allowed to claim. For background, he listed himself as an independent, unaffiliated with any major house. And for magical affinity, he hesitated only a moment before writing the truth. Death. The registrar looked at his form, looked at him, looked at the mark on his throat, which was clearly visible above his simple clothes. Death magic is extremely rare, the registrar said carefully. Are you certain that's accurate? Kale smiled. It was a small smile, tight and controlled, but something in it made the registrar lean back slightly in his chair. Very certain. He was assigned to testing ground 7. There would be 3 phases to the examination. A written test covering magical theory, a practical demonstration of ability, and finally a combat trial against other applicants. Those who passed all 3 would be admitted. Those who failed any one would be sent home. Your word, the written test was almost insultingly easy. Kale had spent years teaching himself from stolen moments in the Ashbourne library. The questions covered basic magical theory, elemental interactions, historical magic usage. He finished in half the time allotted and used the rest to study his fellow applicants. The practical demonstration was more interesting. They called students up one by one to display their abilities before a panel of instructors. Fire mages conjured impressive flames. Water mages shaped elaborate constructs from thin air. One earth mage created a golem that stood twice his height. The crowd was suitably impressed. Then they called Kale's name. He walked to the demonstration area, feeling hundreds of eyes on him. The instructors sat behind their table, faces professionally neutral, but he could see the curiosity in their expressions. Death magic was rare enough that most of them had probably never seen it in person. You may begin, the lead instructor said. Kale raised his hand. The shadows around him responded. rising like eager animals, coiling and twisting into shapes that human minds weren't entirely comfortable processing. He could feel the temperature dropping, feel the ambient life energy in the area shrinking away from his presence. But that wasn't the demonstration. That was just the greeting. He focused, drew on the contract's power, and reached out to the dead. It was a simple technique, one he had discovered during his long nights in the forest. The world was full of death. Every fallen leaf, every decaying insect, every creature that had ever lived and passed on, they left traces behind, echoes. And with death magic, those echoes could be awakened. The ground around him began to shift. Bones emerged, pulled from the earth by will alone. Not human bones, not here, but the remains of animals, birds, insects, all the tiny deaths that accumulated everywhere, all rising at his command and forming into something new. A figure took shape beside him, 8 feet tall, made of countless bone fragments, wreathed in shadow and animated by pure death magic. A construct that shouldn't have been possible for anyone below master level. A demonstration that made every instructor at that table sit up straight in their seats. The figure bowed to the panel. Then it dissolved back into its component parts, returning to the earth from which it had been drawn. Kale lowered his hand. The temperature returned to normal. The shadows retreated to their usual places. "Is that sufficient?" he asked. "No," one answered for a long moment. Then, the lead instructor cleared his throat. "Yes, that's quite sufficient. Please proceed to the combat trials." The combat trials were held in an arena designed to contain magical confrontations. The rules were simple. Each applicant would face another in single combat. Serious injuries would be healed by the Academy's medical staff. Deaths, while rare, were technically possible and would not be punished. The goal was to demonstrate skill and determination, to prove that you could handle the pressures of actual magical conflict. Kale's first opponent was a fire mage from one of the Western noble houses. The boy was talented, clearly trained from birth, confident in his abilities. He looked at Kale with undisguised contempt. "A death mage," he sneered. "How dramatic. Too bad your theatrics won't help you here." He attacked immediately, throwing a concentrated blast of fire that should have overwhelmed any defensive magic. But Kale wasn't relying on defense. He was relying on something far more fundamental. Death magic didn't just affect life. It affected everything, because everything was in the process of dying. Fire consumed its fuel and burned out. Stone eroded over eons. Even energy itself eventually dissipated into the void. Death was the final state of all things, and Kale could accelerate that process. The fire blast hit his shadows and aged 1,000 years in an instant. It arrived as nothing more than warm air and scattered ash. The noble boy stared. Then he attacked again, more desperately, throwing everything he had at the opponent who simply stood there and let his magic die before it could touch him. Kale waited until the boy exhausted himself. Then, he moved. The shadows surged forward, wrapping around the fire mage before he could react, lifting him off his feet and holding him suspended in the air. Kale walked toward him slowly, savoring the fear on his face. "You asked about my theatrics," he said quietly, so only the noble boy could hear. "Here's a secret. That demonstration earlier, the bone construct, that was theatrics. This is what death magic actually does." He reached out and touched the boy's cheek. Just a touch, just the barest contact between his fingertip and human skin. The noble screamed, not from pain, from something worse, from suddenly knowing with absolute certainty exactly how and when he was going to die. Every person had a death waiting for them. Most never had to face that knowledge. Kale had just shared it. He released the boy, letting him fall to the arena floor, sobbing and shaking and very much defeated. The match was over in seconds, but its effects would last much longer. because everyone watching had just learned something important about the quiet boy with the mark on his throat. He was not someone to take lightly. Kale's second opponent forfeited before the match began. His third did the same. Word had spread quickly through the applicant pool. Fighting the death mage was a losing proposition. Even if you won, even if you somehow overpowered his magic and claimed victory, you would never forget the feeling of your own mortality staring back at you. By the end of the day, Kale had won every match without throwing a single offensive spell. The academy officials were so impressed that they moved him directly to the advanced evaluation track, a program reserved for exceptional talents that needed specialized training rather than basic instruction. He had arrived as a nobody, a nameless orphan, with a mark that most people considered a curse. Within hours, he was being treated as one of the most promising students the academy had seen in a generation. And this was only the beginning. His first year at the academy passed quickly. He learned control, discipline, theory that supported and expanded his instinctive understanding of death magic. He trained his body alongside his mind, becoming faster and stronger to complement his magical abilities. And most importantly, he made allies. Lin Mei was the first in. A swordsman from the eastern provinces, she had come to the academy with nothing but talent and determination. She found Kale fascinating, drawn to his quiet intensity and obvious power. They sparred together in the practice grounds, his shadow magic against her blade techniques, pushing each other to improve. Dex was the second. A commoner from the slums of the capital, he had awakened rare spatial magic and earned his place through pure merit. He was loud where Kale was quiet, brash where Kale was calculated, but they understood each other in a way that transcended personality. Both had been underestimated. Both intended to prove every doubter wrong. Iris completed the group. She was minor nobility, distant cousin to one of the great houses possessed of healing magic that made her invaluable. More importantly, she was kind, genuinely, unreservedly kind, in a world where kindness was often seen as weakness. Her presence balanced the others, softening their sharp edges without dulling their resolve. Together, the four of them became a unit. They trained together. They studied together. They protected each other against the political machinations that infested even an institution as prestigious as the academy. And slowly, word began to spread about them, the Death Knight and his companions. That's what people started calling their group. The name was meant to be mocking, at least at first, but over time, as Kale and his friends continued to exceed expectations, continued to defeat opponents who should have been far beyond their level, the mockery faded. It was replaced by something far more dangerous: respect. By the end of his first year, Kale was ranked among the top students in the entire academy, not just among first years, among everyone. His mastery of death magic had grown exponentially, unlocking techniques that his contract seemed eager to provide. He could drain life energy from a distance. He could speak to the recently deceased, pulling information from beyond the veil. He could create shadow constructs that operated independently, carrying out complex tasks without his direct control. And lurking beneath all of these abilities, waiting for the right moment to emerge, was something even more terrifying: the final level of death magic. The power that had made the entity on the Shadow Throne call him an executor. The power over death itself. He hadn't used it yet, hadn't needed to. The enemies he had faced so far, rival students, jealous nobles, the occasional beast during practical exercises, none of them had required that level of response. But Kale could feel it inside him, growing stronger with each passing day. When the time came when he finally faced someone who required everything he had, he would be ready. That time came sooner than he expected. Midway through his second year, the academy received a visit from representatives of the major noble houses. This was a traditional event, an opportunity for families to observe students and begin recruiting promising talents for their factions. Most students saw it as an opportunity. Kale saw it for what it was: The Ashbourne delegation arrived on the third day. Lord Aldrich wasn't among them, but his most trusted lieutenants were, and at the head of the group, wearing the formal robes of the clan's heir apparent, was someone Cale had hoped never to see again. His brother. Not a full brother. They shared a father but different mothers. Vance Ashbourne was everything Cale was not supposed to be. Legitimate. Talented, blessed with fire magic rather than cursed with death. From the moment of his birth, he had been groomed to lead the clan, while Cale had been hidden away like a shameful secret. They hadn't met in person since Cale was 3 years old, but Vance knew about him. Everyone in the clan knew about the cursed firstborn, the death-marked mistake that had killed their mother and shamed their father. And now Vance was here, at the academy, wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Brother," he said when they finally came face to face, "how surprising to find you here. We had assumed you had died in the wilderness somewhere. Grandfather will be so disappointed to learn otherwise." Cale felt the mark on his throat grow warm. The shadows around him stirred, sensing threat. "I'm sure he will," he replied calmly. "Please, give him my regards, and tell him to prepare. I'm coming home eventually, and when I do, things are going to change." Vance's smile flickered. Just for a moment, uncertainty crossed his features. "You think you can threaten the clan? You, the cursed embarrassment, who couldn't even manifest basic magic until some demon marked your soul. The elders have been preparing for years. You have no idea what you're walking into." Cale stepped closer. The temperature around them dropped noticeably. Several nearby students backed away, sensing the building confrontation. Your elders prepared countermeasures for a death mage who hadn't mastered his power. They prepared for a broken boy who would be desperate and weak and easy to overwhelm. They weren't prepared for this. He reached out and touched Vance's chest, just above the heart. 137. That's how many heartbeats you have left if I decide to take them. Your fire magic won't help you. Your clan's protection won't reach you in time. The only thing standing between you and immediate death is my choice not to kill you." Vance tried to summon his power, tried to burn away the hand touching his chest, but his flames wouldn't come. His magic wouldn't respond. Because in that moment, standing in the shadow of death itself, his contract with the fire spirits had been temporarily severed. Death magic didn't just kill bodies, it killed connections. Cale removed his hand, stepped back, let his brother breathe again. "Go home," he said. "Tell grandfather what you learned here. Tell him his cursed grandson sends his regards. And tell him to enjoy the time he has left. It's shorter than he thinks." He turned and walked away. Behind him, Vance Ashbourne stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, processing the fact that everything he had been told about his despised older brother was wrong. Cale had expected the confrontation to have consequences. He had expected the Ashbourne clan to accelerate their plans, to come after him with everything they had. What he hadn't expected was for someone else to get there first. The attack came 3 weeks later, not from the Ashbourne clan, from something far older and far more dangerous. It started with the dreams. Students all across the academy began having nightmares, vivid and terrible visions of blood and fire and endless screaming. The academy healers were overwhelmed. Some students simply refused to sleep, staying awake for days until exhaustion claimed them. Cale's dreams were different. In his dreams, he saw a figure approaching the academy, a figure made of rot and decay, of pestilence and despair, a figure that the entity within his contract recognized immediately. A Lich Lord. One of the ancient undead, powerful enough to challenge nations, coming to claim something that was hidden within the academy's walls, coming to claim it before Cale could discover it himself. He woke from his dream and immediately sought out the academy's headmaster, found him in his office, looking older than his centuries, surrounded by instructors who all wore expressions of controlled panic. "You know what's coming," the headmaster said when Cale entered. "I can see it in your eyes." I know what it wants, Kale replied. There's something here, something valuable enough to attract a Lich Lord's attention. What is it? The headmaster exchanged glances with his instructors. The academy was built on a site of power, ancient power, predating human civilization. Beneath our foundations, sealed away for millennia, is a fragment of the first death. A piece of the original ending, broken off and preserved before time itself began. It's what gives this place its magical resonance. It's why mages trained here grow stronger than those trained elsewhere. And a Lich Lord wants it, Kale said, because a fragment of the first death would give an undead creature power beyond imagination. The headmaster nodded. We've been protecting it for generations. The seals have held for 3,000 years. But this Lich Lord is ancient. It knows techniques we've forgotten. If it reaches the fragment, it will become something beyond our ability to stop. Then we stop it before it gets there, Kale said simply. The instructors stared at him. Even the headmaster, who had seen countless talented students come and go, seemed surprised. You understand what you're saying. A Lich Lord is not some minor threat. Even at the height of our power, facing one would be a desperate battle. And you're a second-year student, talented, yes, but far from ready for this kind of confrontation. Kale smiled. That grave, dark smile that made everyone who saw it deeply uncomfortable. With respect, headmaster, you don't understand what I am. The Lich Lord isn't coming here just for the fragment. It's coming here because it sensed me. It sensed another power over death, another claim on the authority it's been building for thousands of years. This fight was always going to happen. This is just the time and place. He turned to the assembled instructors. Evacuate the students who can't fight. Lock down the sealed areas and stay out of my way. This is between me and it. Nobody argued. Nobody tried to convince him otherwise, because looking at him then, standing in the headmaster's office with shadows curling around his feet and death's cold certainty in his eyes, even the most powerful mages in the academy understood something. This was what KL had been born for. The battle began at midnight. The wards surrounding the academy flickered and failed, one by one, as the Lich Lord approached. Students who had chosen to stay and fight gathered on the walls, their magic ready, their faces pale with fear they refused to show. Kale stood at the front gate alone, waiting. The Lich Lord emerged from the darkness like a nightmare made flesh. It was massive, 3 times the height of a man, wrapped in robes that seemed woven from pure shadow. Its face was a skull wreathed in green flame. Its voice was the sound of tombs opening. Little death mage, I sensed you from miles away. Your contract burns bright in a world full of shadows. But you are young, untested. Whatever power you carry, it is nothing compared to what I have accumulated over millennia. Kale didn't respond with words. He responded with action. The shadows around him surged outward, forming blades and chains and constructs designed to bind and cut. They crashed against the Lich Lord's defenses like waves against a cliff. Powerful, but ultimately ineffective. The Lich Lord laughed. Its laughter was the sound of funeral bells. Is that all? I expected more from Death's Chosen. Let me show you what real necromancy looks like. It raised its skeletal hands, and the ground began to tremble. Across the countryside surrounding the academy, corpses stirred. Every dead thing within miles rose at the Lich Lord's command, an army of the deceased marching toward the academy's walls. Kale felt them coming, thousands upon thousands of undead, drawn from battlefields and graveyards and anywhere death had visited in the past 1,000 years. An army that would overwhelm the academy's defenses through sheer numbers. And for the first time since awakening his full power, he used the ability he had been holding in reserve. He spoke a word, just one word, in a language that predated human speech. A word that the entity within his contract had taught him. A word that meant, simply and absolutely rest. The army stopped. Every single undead, from the freshly risen corpses to the ancient warriors pulled from forgotten tombs, they all stopped moving. And then, slowly, they began to sink back into the earth. The Lich Lord stared. Its green flames flickered with something that might have been surprise. Impossible. Those are my servants. They obey my will. How are you countermanding my control? Kale stepped forward. The shadows around him weren't just shadows anymore. They were extensions of something vast, reaching across dimensions to touch the fundamental truth of mortality. You borrow death's power. You steal it, corrupt it, use it for purposes it was never meant to serve. But I don't borrow anything. Death gave me its authority freely. When I tell the dead to rest, they rest. When I tell death to take someone, it takes them. And when I decide that a creature has lived long enough, lived too long, abused its existence past the point of any redemption, he raised his hand. I end them. The power that erupted from him was unlike anything the Academy had ever seen. It was the pure expression of mortality, the concentrated essence of endings, focused through a human vessel and aimed at a single target. The Lich Lord tried to flee, tried to dissolve into shadow, to escape into the spaces between life and death where it had hidden for millennia. But there was no escape from what Kale had become. There was no hiding from death's executor. The ancient undead screamed as the power hit it. It was the first sound it had made in 1,000 years that contained genuine fear. Its form began to unravel, its accumulated centuries of existence stripping away layer by layer. This cannot be, it howled. I am eternal. I am beyond death. Kale walked toward it, through the maelstrom of dissipating energy, untouched by the destruction he was causing. Nothing is beyond death. Nothing is eternal. You should have learned that millennia ago, when you first cheated your way out of the grave. Instead, you hoarded life you weren't meant to have and spread suffering everywhere you went. He reached the creature's disintegrating form, looked into the guttering flames of its eyes. Your debt is overdue. Time to pay. He touched the Lich Lord's skull, and the creature that had terrorized nations for 3,000 years simply ceased to exist. The silence afterward was deafening. Students who had been prepared to die defending their academy stood on the walls, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Instructors who had been gathering their most powerful magic let their spells fade, realizing they had never been needed. And Kale stood in the space where a Lich Lord had been, breathing slowly, feeling the after effects of channeling power he hadn't fully mastered yet. His body ached, his mind was foggy. He had pushed himself far beyond safe limits, but he had won. He had faced an ancient evil and destroyed it utterly. He had proven that the contract's power, properly utilized, could change the world. And somewhere, in the shadow realm beyond mortal perception, the entity on the throne of darkness smiled. Word spread quickly after that night. The Academy tried to control the narrative, to downplay what had happened, but there were too many witnesses. Too many students had seen the cursed boy from the Ashbourne clan stand against an undead horror that should have been unstoppable. Within weeks, Kale's name was known across the continent. Death's executor, people called him now. The boy who had ended a Lich Lord. The wielder of death magic that made even ancient evils tremble. The noble houses took notice. Suddenly, everyone wanted to ally with him, to claim connection to the young mage who had done the impossible. Marriage proposals arrived by the dozen. Offers of patronage, partnership, friendship, they poured in from every corner of the realm. Kale ignored them all. He had no interest in political games. He had no desire to become a pawn in other people's schemes. His goal remained the same as it had always been. Grow stronger, return home. Make the Ashbourne clan pay for every year of suffering they had inflicted upon him. But that goal was about to become more complicated than he had anticipated, because the Lich Lord's defeat hadn't just made him famous, It had drawn the attention of powers far greater than any noble house. The message arrived a month after the battle. It came not through normal channels but through his dreams, delivered by a figure that felt simultaneously ancient and impossibly young. The High Council of Mages requests your presence. The matter is of utmost importance. The fate of the realm may depend on your response. Kale woke from that dream with the sense that everything was about to change. The High Council didn't summon people casually. Whatever they wanted, it was big enough to reshape the political landscape of the entire world. He gathered his friends, Lin Mei, Dex, Iris. They had proven themselves during the Lich Lord's attack, fighting bravely on the walls while he dealt with the main threat. He trusted them more than he trusted anyone else in the world. I don't know what the council wants, he told them, but I know it's going to be dangerous. You don't have to come with me. Lin Mei's hand went to her sword. Of course we're coming. You think we'd let you face unknown danger alone after everything we've been through? Dex grinned his usual cocky grin. Besides, this is exactly the kind of adventure I came to the Academy to find. World-shaping events, powerful enemies, mysterious summons from ancient magical authorities. This is the good stuff. Iris just smiled her gentle smile. Someone has to keep you three from getting killed. Might as well be me. Kale looked at his friends. His first real friends, the people who had accepted him when he was just a strange boy with a death mark on his throat. The people who had believed in him before he had proven himself worthy of belief. All right, he said, we go together. Whatever the council wants, we'll face it as a team. They left the academy 3 days later. The journey to the council's hidden location would take weeks, traveling through territories where Kale's fame preceded him and enemies watched from every shadow. But that's a story for another time. Right now, what matters is this. A boy who was born cursed, who was abandoned by his family and treated as less than human for 15 years, who signed a contract with death itself before he could even speak, had become something extraordinary. He had faced ancient evils and emerged victorious. He had gathered allies who would follow him into any battle. He had grown from a helpless child into a weapon that entire nations feared. And he was just getting started. If you want to know what happens next, if you want to see how Kale's journey continues and what the High Council wants from Death's executor, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. The story is far from over, and the best parts are still to come. The journey to the High Council's hidden sanctum took 17 days. 17 days of traveling through territories that ranged from friendly to hostile. 17 days of watching Kale's reputation precede him like a shadow cast by a much larger figure. The first week passed without major incident. They traveled through the northern provinces where the Academy's influence kept them relatively safe. Towns welcomed them, innkeepers refused their payment, and curious crowds gathered wherever they stopped. Word of the Lich Lord's destruction had spread far, and people wanted to see the young mage who had accomplished the impossible. Kale found the attention uncomfortable. For 15 years he had been invisible. Now everyone stared, everyone whispered, everyone wanted something from him. It was exhausting in ways that combat never was. Lin Mei noticed his discomfort. One evening, as they camped in a forest clearing to avoid yet another town eager to celebrate them, she sat beside him at the fire. You don't like being famous, she observed. Kale shook his head. Being famous isn't the same as being respected. These people don't know me. They know a story about me. The moment that story changes, the moment I do something they don't approve of, they'll turn just as quickly. Lin Mei considered this. And when you return to face your clan, you think the fame will help or hurt. Neither. He stared into the flames, watching them dance. The Ashbourne clan doesn't care about public opinion. They never have. They'll fight me regardless of how many people cheer my name. What matters is being strong enough to win that fight. Then why are we going to the High Council? Lin Mei asked. Why not return to your clan now, while your power is fresh and your enemies are uncertain? Kale was quiet for a long moment. Because the entity within my contract told me something, he finally said. When I destroyed the Lich Lord, it spoke to me, not in words exactly, more like impressions, feelings, knowledge that appeared in my mind without being spoken. It told me that the Lich Lord was just the beginning, that there are other things out there, older and darker than anything I've faced, and they're waking up. Lin Mei's hand went to her sword instinctively. What kind of things? The kind of things that ended the previous age. The kind of things that my contract was originally designed to fight. The Lich Lord was an aberration, a human who cheated death and accumulated power over millennia. But there are creatures that were never human to begin with, ancient beings that existed before mortality was invented. And one of them is stirring. Why would the High Council know anything about that? Kale turned to look at her directly. Because the Council has been preparing for this for 3,000 years. That's why they exist. Not to govern mages or mediate disputes between noble houses. Their true purpose, their secret purpose, is to stand ready for the return of the things that nearly destroyed the world once before. And they finally decided I need to know the truth. The second week was harder. They crossed into territories where the Ashbourne clan's influence was strong, where local lords owed allegiance to Kale's grandfather and would happily deliver the cursed heir to curry favor. They were attacked 3 times. The first attack came from a group of mercenaries, 20 men with enchanted weapons and just enough magical training to be dangerous. They ambushed the group in a mountain pass, expecting to overwhelm 4 young mages through sheer numbers. Lin Mei cut down 5 of them before they even realized what was happening. Her blade moved like water, flowing between opponents with a grace that made violence look like art. Dex teleported among the remaining attackers, appearing and disappearing in patterns that left them swinging at empty air. Iris stood back, her healing magic ready, but she wasn't needed. Kale simply watched, letting his friends handle a threat that was beneath his direct involvement. When it was over, Lin Mei cleaned her sword while Dex searched the bodies for information. Ashbourne clan hired them, Dex reported. He held up a sigil ring, the kind used to prove authority when dealing with contractors. They were told to capture you alive if possible. Kill you if not. Kale took the ring, turned it over in his hands, felt the echo of his grandfather's magic embedded in the metal. Keep it, he said. Might be useful later. The second attack was more sophisticated. A team of actual mages, trained assassins from the Tower of Shadows, the same organization the Ashbourne elders had once considered selling Kale to. They struck at night, using concealment magic that should have made them invisible even to other practitioners. But death magic perceived things that other powers couldn't. Kale sensed their life force approaching, long before they reached the camp. He was waiting for them when their leader materialized out of darkness, blade aimed at his throat. The assassin's strike met shadow. The shadow held firm. And then, the shadow began to squeeze. Who sent you? Kale asked calmly. The tower doesn't take contracts against mages. It's against your founding charter. The assassin struggled against bonds that grew tighter with each passing second. Someone paid enough to make us ignore the charter. Someone very powerful, very desperate. The Ashbourne clan. No. The assassin's voice was strained now, the shadows constricting his chest. Different. Older. They said you were going to ruin everything. They said you had to be stopped before you reached the council. Cal considered this, released his hold just enough to let the man breathe. Described them. I never saw their face. Communication was through intermediaries, but the magic felt wrong. Old in a way that humans don't get to be old. Like talking to a mountain or a storm. Kale absorbed this information. Then he released the assassin entirely. Go back to your tower. Tell them the next team they send won't be returning at all. And tell whoever hired you that I know they're watching. I know they're afraid. And they should be. The assassin fled into the night. Kale stood watch until dawn, thinking about ancient beings and cosmic threats. and the feeling of wrongness the assassin had described. Something out there didn't want him reaching the High Council. Something beyond human, beyond anything the Ashbourne clan could have arranged. The question was whether that something was the same entity his contract had warned him about, or if there were multiple powers moving against him simultaneously. The third attack was the worst. It came on the final day before they would reach the council's sanctum. They had crossed into neutral territory, supposedly safe ground where no faction would risk conflict. But the thing that struck them wasn't affiliated with any human faction. Iris sensed it first. Her healing magic was attuned to life force, and she felt the absence before anyone else noticed. "Something's wrong," she said, stopping in the middle of the road. "The plants here, they're not alive anymore. I mean, they look alive, but there's nothing inside them. It's like the life has been hollowed out." Kale expanded his senses. Iris was right. The forest around them had become a shell, the appearance of life without any of the substance. And at the center of that void, moving toward them with the patience of something that had all the time in the world, was a presence that made his contract burn with recognition. A void walker. The entity's knowledge flooded his mind without warning. Ancient predators from between worlds. They don't kill life. They consume its meaning. They hollow out existence until nothing remains but shapes without substance. I thought they had been sealed away. They should have been sealed away. "How do we fight it?" Kale asked, not speaking aloud but addressing the presence within his contract directly. "You can't fight it conventionally. Voidwalkers exist outside the normal rules. Physical attacks pass through them. Magical attacks feed them. The only thing they fear is ending, true ending, the authority that your contract represents. Then, tell me how to use that authority against this thing." The answer came in the form of knowledge, technique, and understanding transferred directly into his consciousness. It hurt, like having someone else's thoughts forcibly jammed into his skull, but there was no time for gentle instruction. The Void Walker emerged from the hollowed forest. It didn't have a shape exactly. It was more like a hole in the world, a space where something should have been, but wasn't. Looking at it felt like forgetting, like everything Kale had ever known or felt was slowly draining away through his eyes. "Run," he told his friends. "Get to the sanctum. I'll handle this." "We're not leaving you," Lin Mei started to say. "This isn't a discussion." Kale's voice was flat, final. "That thing will hollow you out if you stay. You'll become empty shells, walking corpses without souls. I'm the only one here who can survive facing it directly. Go. Now." Dex grabbed Lin Mei's arm. Iris was already moving, trusting Kale's judgment even when it terrified her. For a moment, Lin Mei resisted. Then she saw Kale's eyes, saw the power building behind them, and she understood. "Don't die," she said. "We still have places to go together." Then she ran. All three of them ran, leaving Kale alone with something that shouldn't have been able to exist in any sane universe. The Void Walker approached. With each step, more of the world around it became hollow. Trees, grass, insects, even the air itself seemed to grow thin and meaningless. Kale didn't wait for it to reach him. He attacked first, channeling the technique the entity had given him. He didn't try to strike the walker with shadow or death magic. Instead, he reached into the conceptual space that the walker occupied and imposed a different meaning. The walker existed as absence. Kale made that absence into presence, forced it to be something, anything, other than nothing. The walker screamed. It was a sound that shouldn't have been possible from something that existed outside normal rules, a sound that meant Kale's attack was working. But working wasn't the same as winning. The walker pushed back, trying to impose its nature over his, trying to hollow him out the same way it had hollowed out the forest. Kale felt pieces of himself starting to fade, his memories of the academy becoming distant. His anger at the Ashbourne clan becoming vague. Even his connection to his friends, the bonds he had formed over 2 years, they were slipping away like water through open fingers. No, he refused. Absolutely and completely refused. He had spent 15 years being nothing. He had spent 15 years being told he didn't matter, didn't belong, didn't deserve to exist. He was not going to let some cosmic horror from between worlds take away the person he had finally become. His contract flared, not just the mark on his throat. His entire body lit up with symbols that had been invisible until this moment. Writing that covered his skin from head to toe. The full terms of the deal his mother had made. And at the center of that writing, in letters that burned with the light of final endings, was a single word, EXECTR. The Voidwalker tried to flee, tried to escape back into the spaces between worlds where it had been hiding for eons. But Kale wouldn't let it. He had the Walker's attention now, had it anchored to this reality through sheer force of will, and he was not going to let go. You feed on meaning, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that humans shouldn't have been able to produce. You consume purpose and leave emptiness behind. But here's something you don't understand about death. He raised his hand, and the full power of his contract focused into a single point. Death is the ultimate meaning. Death is what gives everything else significance. Without ending, nothing matters. Without mortality, existence becomes the kind of hollow emptiness you create. I am not the enemy of meaning. I am its guardian, and you have overstayed your welcome in this world. The light that erupted from his palm wasn't darkness. It wasn't shadow. It was the pure essence of conclusion, the concentrated truth that all things end. It hit the Voidwalker like a physical force, and the Walker began to disintegrate. But not like the Lich Lord had disintegrated. The Lich Lord had been destroyed, its accumulated existence unwound and released. The Voidwalker was different. It was being filled. Its absence was being replaced with presence, its nothingness being crowded out by something. The Walker was being forced to become real, and the moment it became real, it became mortal. The moment it had shape and substance and meaning, it became subject to the same rules as everything else, including the rule that said all things die. The Walker's screams reached a crescendo. Then, suddenly, there was silence. Where the cosmic horror had been, there was only a body, humanoid, roughly, made of something that looked like crystallized shadow, lying still on the ground, no longer a threat to anyone. Kale stood over it, breathing hard, his contract's symbols slowly fading back into invisibility. He had won. Against something that shouldn't have been beatable, he had won. But the victory had cost him. He could feel the edges of his consciousness fraying, the strain of channeling that much power through a human body. He needed rest. He needed healing. He needed to reach the sanctum before something else found him. He started walking, one step at a time, following the path his friends had taken, hoping they had made it safely. He found them at the gates of the council's sanctum, Iris already working on healing minor injuries they had sustained during their flight. When they saw him approaching, all 3 of them rushed forward. "You're alive," Lin Mei said, and there was something in her voice that might have been relief, might have been something more. Barely. Kale's legs gave out, and only Dex's quick reflexes kept him from hitting the ground. "The thing I fought, it was worse than the Lich Lord, worse than anything I've encountered. And according to my contract, it was just a scout." "A scout for what?" Dex asked, supporting Kale's weight as they moved toward the sanctum's entrance. "That's what I'm hoping the council can tell me." The sanctum's doors opened before they reached them. Standing in the entrance was a figure in robes that seemed woven from living starlight, ancient eyes assessing the group with an intensity that made even Kale's contract stir nervously. "Kale Ashbourne," the figure said, "Death's executor. We've been expecting you, and it seems we have much to discuss." The interior of the sanctum was unlike anything Kale had ever seen. It existed in a space that didn't quite follow normal rules, corridors stretching longer than buildings should allow, rooms that opened onto views of places that couldn't exist on the mortal plane. The council itself was composed of 7 members, each one a master of magic so profound that even being in their presence made Kale's skin tingle. They sat at a curved table that looked carved from a single piece of crystal, their faces hidden within hoods that seemed filled with the darkness between stars. "We know why you've come," the central figure said. The voice was neither male nor female, young nor old. It simply was. "You seek answers about your nature, your purpose, the threats arrayed against you." Kale nodded. "Something attacked me on the way here. Something that my contract identified as a void walker. It told me there are more, that they've been sealed away but are waking up." The council members exchanged glances, or at least, Kale assumed they did. It was hard to tell with faces hidden in shadow. "The seals are failing." A different council member spoke now, this one's voice carrying the weight of mountains. 3,000 years ago, when the last age ended and the current one began, we made bargains with entities beyond human understanding. We agreed to guard the barriers between worlds in exchange for power and knowledge, but bargains wear thin, powers fade. And the things we sealed away have been patient. "What were they?" Kale asked. "What exactly did you seal?" "The beings known as the Void Walkers are just one faction," the original speaker again. "They exist in the spaces between worlds, feeding on meaning and purpose. But they're not the most dangerous thing that was sealed, they're not even close." A projection appeared in the air above the table. It showed a landscape of chaos, reality twisted and broken, figures that defied description, moving through the destruction. The primordial chaos, the first state of existence before order was imposed. It seeks to return everything to formlessness, to undo the very concept of structure and differentiation. The beings that serve it, the Void Walkers and others, they're just heralds, scouts preparing the way for something that could unmake reality itself. "And my contract," Kale said slowly, "the deal my mother made. How does it connect to all of this?" Silence. Then the central figure rose from its seat and approached him directly. "Your mother made no deal. The entity that marked you, it made a deal with itself. It created you, shaped your existence from the moment of your conception. Your mother was simply the vessel it chose." Kale felt something cold settle in his chest. "What are you saying?" The figure reached out and touched the mark on his throat. The contact burned, but Kale held still. "You know the entity as death, as a force of nature inevitable and impartial. But that's not what it truly is. Death is a concept invented when existence first separated from chaos. It was created as a counterbalance, a force that would prevent anything from becoming eternal, from accumulating enough power to threaten the fundamental structure of reality." The figure stepped back. "And now you know why you were created. The seals are failing. The primordial chaos is stirring, and Death's executor exists to execute those who would unmake the world." Kale absorbed this information. He thought about the Lich Lord, who had accumulated power for millennia. He thought about the Void Walker, which existed by consuming meaning. He thought about all the enemies he had faced and all the enemies yet to come. "My clan," he said, "the Ashbourne family. They tried to destroy me because they didn't understand what I am." The council member nodded. They saw a curse where there was a purpose. They saw a threat where there was a guardian. Their fear was understandable, if ultimately foolish. But someone understood. Someone hired assassins to stop me from reaching you. Someone who knew what I am and wanted to prevent this meeting. Yes. The figure returned to its seat. There are those who serve the chaos willingly, who believe that formlessness is better than structure, that existence is a mistake that should be corrected. They've been working against the seals for centuries, weakening them from within while we grew complacent and distracted by human affairs. What do you want from me? Kale asked directly. Why did you summon me here? We want you to do what you were made for. The entire council spoke now, 7 voices merging into one. We want you to hunt the agents of chaos wherever they hide. We want you to destroy the beings that slip through the weakening seals. We want you to be the executor that death created you to be. Kale looked at his friends, at Lin Mei, who had followed him into danger without hesitation, at Dex, who grinned even in the face of cosmic horror, at Iris, whose gentle nature hid a core of absolute resolve. Then he looked back at the council. Fine, but I have conditions. The council's surprise was palpable. No one makes demands of us. I'm not making demands. I'm stating facts. Kale's voice was steady. I'll hunt your threats. I'll destroy the things slipping through your failing seals, but I won't do it alone, and I won't abandon my own goals. The Ashbourne clan made my life a hell for 15 years. They tried to break me, kill me, erase me. Before I save the world, I'm going to make them answer for what they did. Silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, the council laughed. It was a strange sound, multiple voices finding humor simultaneously. The fire in you. That's exactly what we need. Very well, Kale Ashbourne. Handle your personal affairs. Just don't take too long. The seals won't hold forever. They gave him resources, knowledge, artifacts that would help in the battles to come. They explained more about the chaos and its servants, about the other executors who had existed throughout history and how they had fought, and they told him something about the Ashbourne clan that changed everything. Your grandfather made a deal, the council revealed on Kale's final day in the sanctum. When you were born, when your mark was first seen, he sought power to destroy you. And he found it. Not from elemental spirits like your clan's traditional magic, from something darker, something that serves the chaos. Kale felt his blood run cold. Are you saying the Ashbourne clan is working with the forces I'm supposed to fight? Not the entire clan. Just Aldrich. Just the patriarch. He was desperate to eliminate the threat you represented. And desperation makes people susceptible to certain offers. He didn't understand what he was agreeing to. Most mortals don't, but his deal has been slowly corrupting your clan's magic for 15 years. If it continues, the entire Ashbourne bloodline will become servants of chaos without even realizing it. So I don't just need to defeat my grandfather, I need to break whatever deal he made before it consumes everyone. The council nodded. Consider it your first mission. Return home, end the corruption, and show the world what Death's executor can do. Kale left the sanctum with his friends at his side and a purpose burning in his heart. He had started this journey as a boy seeking revenge, a victim who wanted to become strong enough to punish those who had wronged him. Now he was something more, something that had existed since the dawn of time, waiting for this moment to emerge. He was the force that would stand between reality and oblivion, the guardian of meaning in a universe that some wanted to unmake. But first, he had a family reunion to attend. The Ashbourne estate looked smaller than he remembered. After the sanctum, after the cosmic scale of everything he had learned, the grand mansion where he had spent 15 miserable years seemed almost insignificant, just another collection of stone and magic. Impressive to ordinary eyes, but nothing compared to the forces he now understood. His friends stood with him at the edge of the estate's warded boundary. They had traveled back across the continent, avoiding the attention that his growing reputation continued to attract. They had prepared for this moment, trained for it, discussed strategy until every contingency was covered. Now it was time. You know you don't have to do this alone, Lin Mei said. Whatever's in there, we can face it together. KL shook his head. The corruption in my grandfather's contract, it responds to his bloodline. If you get too close while I'm breaking it, you'll be affected. This part has to be me. Then we'll secure the perimeter, Dex said. Make sure no one interferes or escapes, and I'll be ready to heal anyone who needs it. Iris's voice was firm despite the worry in her eyes. Including you. Especially you. Kale looked at each of them in turn, his friends, the first real family he had ever had. Thank you, all of you, for everything. Then he turned and walked toward the estate, shadows coiling around his feet with every step. The wards recognized him. Of course they did. He was still Ashbourne blood, no matter how much the clan had tried to deny it. The magical barriers parted to let him pass, and Kale found himself walking through gardens where he had once pulled weeds in silence, past training grounds where he had watched others learn magic he was forbidden to practice. Servants saw him coming and fled. Guards took one look at his eyes, at the power emanating from him, and decided that discretion was the better part of valor. By the time he reached the main hall, word had spread throughout the estate. The cursed heir had returned. And he wasn't alone. The shadows themselves walked beside him. Lord Aldrich was waiting. The patriarch stood in the center of the main hall, surrounded by the clan's strongest mages, his own power blazing with a sickly purple tint that confirmed everything the council had told Kale about his corrupted contract. "You actually came back," Aldrich said. His voice dripped with contempt, but there was something beneath it, domed, something that might have been fear. "After all these years, after everything we did to eliminate you, you actually came back." Kale stopped 20 feet from his grandfather. The shadows around him stretched across the floor, filling the hall with darkness that had nothing to do with the time of day. "You made a deal," he said. 15 years ago, when I was born. You were so desperate to destroy me that you sought power from entities you didn't understand, and now that power is corrupting everything you've built." Aldrich's face twisted. "You know nothing about what I did, what I sacrificed for this clan. I know everything." Kale's voice was flat, final. "The High Council told me. Your deal was with servants of the primordial chaos, the same forces that ended the previous age. The same forces that want to unmake reality itself. You sold your soul and your clan's future to something that sees all of existence as a mistake to be corrected." The mages surrounding Aldrich exchanged nervous glances. Whatever their patriarch had promised them, this wasn't it. "Even if that's true," Aldrich growled, "it changes nothing. The power I gained from that deal is more than enough to destroy you. I am immortal now. I am beyond death itself. No one is beyond death." Kale raised his hand. The mark on his throat blazed with light, and symbols began appearing across his skin. The full terms of his contract becoming visible for the first time since he had faced the Voidwalker. "Death is the foundation of meaning. Death is what separates existence from chaos. And I am Death's executor. Your borrowed immortality is nothing but a lie, grandfather. Let me show you the truth." The battle that followed would become legend. Stories would be told for generations about the night the cursed heir returned, about the confrontation between death itself and those who had tried to escape its reach. Aldrich's corrupted magic clashed against Kale's authority. Purple fire met consuming shadow. The mages supporting the patriarch attacked from all sides, but the shadows intercepted everything, feeding on their magic just as they had fed on the Lich Lord's power. One by one, the supporters fell. Not dead. Kale wasn't interested in killing everyone who had ever wronged him, but certainly defeated, certainly humiliated, certainly made to understand that the boy they had treated as garbage had become something beyond their comprehension. In the end, only Aldrich remained standing. The patriarch had burned through most of his corrupted power, but he refused to surrender. He had ruled this clan for over a century. He had bent the world to his will. He would not bow to the grandchild he had tried to destroy. "You can't kill me," he snarled. "The deal I made protects me from death. No matter what power you wield, I am beyond your reach." Kale walked toward him, shadows parting around him like a royal court, making way for its king. "Your deal doesn't protect you from death. It makes you a servant of chaos. an agent of meaninglessness, and my authority as executor includes the right to terminate those contracts. He reached his grandfather, looking up into the face of the man who had made his childhood a nightmare. You spent 15 years trying to break me. You failed. Then you spent 15 years preparing to destroy me. You failed at that too. And now you're standing here watching everything you built crumble, and you still don't understand what went wrong. He touched Aldrich's chest, just above the heart. What went wrong is that you forgot the first rule of power. It always has a cost. Your deal gave you strength, but it took your wisdom. Your immortality was purchased with your ability to recognize danger. You were so focused on the curse you thought I represented that you never noticed you were becoming something far worse. The mark on his throat pulsed. The symbols on his skin blazed. I'm not going to kill you, grandfather. I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to free you. The light that erupted between them wasn't destructive. It reached into the corrupted contract that bound Aldrich's soul and dissolved it, severing the connection to chaos that had been feeding on the patriarch for 15 years. And without that connection, without the borrowed immortality that had kept him alive far past his natural span, Aldrich began to age. 130 years caught up with him in seconds. His skin wrinkled and sagged. His hair whitened and fell out. His muscles atrophied and his bones grew brittle. By the time the light faded, the man standing before Kale was ancient, fragile, barely able to remain upright. "What have you done?" Aldrich whispered. His voice was broken now, stripped of all its authority and power. "I've given you what you feared most." Kale stepped back. "I've made you mortal again. Whatever time you have left, and it won't be much, you'll spend it knowing that everything you sacrificed was for nothing. Your immortality is gone. Your power is gone. And the clan you tried to protect from me will now have to choose a new leader." He turned to face the assembled clan members, the mages and knights and servants who had watched their patriarch fall. "The Ashbourne bloodline is corrupted. The deal Aldrich made has been tainting your magic for 15 years. I can cleanse it, but only if you accept what I am. Only if you acknowledge that the boy you treated as a curse was actually your salvation." Silence stretched through the hall. Then, slowly, one mage knelt. Then another. Then more, until nearly everyone in the room had bent knee to the heir they had once despised. Kale looked at his father, standing at the edge of the crowd. Ronan Ashbourne met his son's eyes and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The cleansing took 3 days. Kale worked his way through the clan, severing the threads of corruption that had woven themselves into every Ashbourne's magical foundation. It was exhausting work, detailed and precise, nothing like the raw power he had wielded in battle. His friends helped where they could. Lin Mei maintained security, ensuring that no remaining loyalists could interfere. Dex used his spatial magic to create isolated chambers where the cleansing could happen without risk of contamination spreading. Iris worked alongside KL, her healing abilities complementing his death magic in ways that neither had expected. By the end of it, the Ashbourne clan was transformed. Their magic was cleaner, purer, closer to what it had been before Aldrich made his desperate bargain. They were also undeniably loyal to the one who had saved them. Kale didn't want to lead them. He had larger responsibilities, cosmic threats that required his attention. But he couldn't simply abandon the clan either. They were his blood, whether he liked it or not, and they could be useful in the battles to come. So he appointed his father as regent. Ronan had spent 15 years being a coward, running from responsibility, allowing his son to suffer in silence. This was his chance at redemption. His chance to prove that he could be something other than a broken man haunted by his wife's death. "I'm trusting you," Kale told him on the day he prepared to leave. "Not because I forgive you, not because I've forgotten anything, but because this clan needs someone to guide it while I'm gone, and you're the only choice that makes sense." Ronan bowed his head. "I won't fail you again." Kale didn't respond. He wasn't ready to believe that. Maybe he never would be. But he was willing to give his father the opportunity to try. His friends were waiting at the estate gates. Behind them, stretching across the horizon, was a world that needed protecting. Ancient evils stirring, cosmic forces gathering, reality itself threatened by entities that wanted to unmake everything. Death's executor had work to do. Where to first? Lin Mei asked as they set out. When can you step out? Kale considered the question. The council had given him information about several potential threats. Locations where the seals were weakest, places where chaos agents had been sighted. East, he finally said. There are reports of something happening near the Shattered Coast. Something that matches the description of a Void Walker nest. Dex grinned. So we're going to find a bunch of reality-eating cosmic horrors and punch them in the metaphorical face. Essentially. Sounds like fun. Let's go. They walked together into the rising sun. 4 friends who had become something more than friends. Companions forged in battle and bound by purpose. A sword master who could cut through anything. A spatial mage who could be anywhere in an instant. A healer whose compassion was matched only by her resolve. And at their head, the boy who had been born cursed, who had signed a deal with death before drawing his first breath, whose entire existence was proof that even the darkest beginnings could lead to the brightest futures. He was Kale Ashbourne, Death's executor. And he was just getting started. If you made it this far, you already know this story deserves more attention. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next. The best parts of this journey are still ahead. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single moment of what's coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.